So today we're on week 2 of our latest sermon series called Generational Blessings, the Unique Power and Potential of Older Adults. And one of the reasons we're doing this series is because mainline churches like ours are full of older adults. You know, the average age of Methodists is 57, and we Presbyterians are a little bit ahead of them, with our average age being 59. And it's so important in this time when there are so many harmful, negative stereotypes of older adults to have some good news about old age. Older adults make wonderful contributions to our congregations and to our communities, and we need to hear that and celebrate it. And last week we started with the story of Abraham and Sarah, the ancestors of our faith who became parents when Sarah was 90 and Abraham was 100. And God had chosen them and worked through them not in spite of their ages, but because of their ages. They had faith when things seemed impossible, and because they did, they became role models for all the rest of us. I invited us to see ourselves as role models as we age, because people are looking at us. They need to see how life can potentially be more meaningful, even more fruitful, even more joyful as we age. They need to be reminded that old people too reflect the image of God. They need to see that God continues to have a purpose for us as we age. And they need to see that old age is not something to dread. Now, I'm not trying to be too optimistic here. I know old age is hard. I have had too many conversations with too many people over the past 17 years to be in denial about this. Our bodies, our minds, our abilities change, and it is tough. And yet, old age can also be a time of incredible fruitfulness. So today I'm not just drawing from Scripture, I'm also giving some personal testimony. Well, in today's story, we meet Simeon and Anna, two more very fruitful and influential older adults. And their story shines a light on the unique gifts that I think are special to older adults. Not that younger people don't have them, but they don't have them like this. They just can't. And the first one will probably not be a big surprise to you. The first one's pretty obvious, and that is the gift of wisdom, experience, and perspective. Older adults can see things in a way that younger ones cannot. You know, it's no accident that Simeon and Anna are the ones that find Jesus in the temple. The temple is huge. I mean, imagine trying to find somebody at Arrowhead Stadium. That's what we're talking about. It's this huge building, crowded full of people. It's no coincidence that these two are the ones that find Jesus. They have decades of prayer and praise under their belts. They have been seeking for God for decades. Older adults have wisdom to pass on, and it's not just the practical skills, although there's plenty of those. Fixing, baking, making, taking care of things, writing thank you notes, how to save money, how to cut up a chicken. I'm still trying to master that one. My mother has tried to teach me so many times. But more important even than that is how to stay calm during a crisis. Older adults know how to do this better than younger adults because you've seen more. We've seen more. You've seen interest rates be worse than this. You've seen inflation be worse than this. You know things change. And another great perspective older adults have to teach us is to not worry so much about things like looks or what other people think because you know that a health challenge or a loss comes along and puts all of that into perspective. So, a second strength is hope. I don't think anybody knows how to hope like an older adult who has gone through a loss. And I know that right now in our very midst, there are older adults who have suffered unspeakable losses. And yet, you also manage to show us that there's life on the other side of those. Simeon, I love him because he is looking forward to the consolation of Israel. He's not looking back at the past, to the good old days. He is looking forward to God's future. When older adults can do that, you inspire everybody else in a way that younger people cannot, because older adults know that the number of days behind them is greater than the number of days ahead of them. And because you have seen so much. So when you hope, you aren't being optimistic or naive, you're being faithful and courageous. There's substance in your hope. A third strength is presence. Our society is ridiculously, appallingly, stupidly busy. I'm even tempted to say it is evil how busy we are. I just don't think that's how God wants us to live. Older adults who have the privilege of being retired don't have to live like that. They're able to show up and give attention to the things that really matter, whether those things are grandchildren coming to church, listening to a concert, paying attention to a bird in your yard, Bible study. The list goes on. Anna spends her days in the temple, fasting and praying, in part because she can. And because of her faithful presence, she has this tremendous authority. People listen to her. She is the one telling everybody about Jesus. And so even when we have to give up our activities and can't get out as much, older adults make an enormous impact simply by the quality of their presence, bringing a kind of peace with them that is very appealing and very comforting. A fourth strength is truth-telling. And this is what Simeon does with Anna. He tells her something that is going to be hard for her to hear, but it's necessary. And he says it with such great love that she's able to hear it and remember it. And I've often noticed that older adults can be more direct. And I've often wondered if perhaps this is because they have a stronger sense of their time being more limited, and that there's more to lose by not speaking up than there is by speaking up. Now, sometimes older adults can be too direct. Any adult can be too direct and too forthcoming in sharing their opinions, and even start to drive people away from them with their blunt and sometimes tactless and unnecessary comments. This is something we'll talk about more in a couple of weeks. But sometimes an honest, unfiltered assessment is exactly what is needed, provided it is done with love. And if you can throw some humor in there, even better. I love to tell the story of a time I was having lunch with some friends, And I was seated with a lovely young woman I didn't know very well who was asking me some questions about my life and my work. And she asked, "Doesn't your church judge you for being married so many times?" Now, mind you, I had not met Dusty yet, so I'd only been married 3 times at that point. And we happened to be sitting with one of our older members, Dr. Walt Menninger. So I promptly turned to Walt and said, "Walt, does our church judge me for being married so many times?" And Walt smiled and looked at me and he said, "Oh, no, dear. They don't judge you for being married so many times. They judge you for being a woman." True story. Tell it like it is. A 5th strength is acceptance. Now, some, though not all, older adults have this amazing ability to accept people exactly as they are. I mean, it is a beautiful thing. No criticism, no judgment, no pushing for improvement. And when we can offer this radical acceptance to people, I truly believe we are actively participating in healing the world. If you are one of these wonderful older adults who can do this, who accepts people for who they are, no judgment, please know you are making a huge difference just by being who you are. You give off the same vibe, the same energy, the same blessing as Simeon when he takes the baby Jesus in his arms. Number 6 is generosity. Not all, but many older adults are able to be generous financially because they have more assets than obligations. Without the generous gifts of older adults, there would be no Topeka Symphony. There would be no Topeka Civic Theater. There would be no Tiffany windows. There would be no lots of things that make Topeka a worthwhile place to live. This church would look dramatically different without the gifts of older adults. In fact, it may not even exist. In our story today, Simeon and Anna model the generosity of time and attention. And that kind of generosity can even be heroic. Like after the 2011 tsunami in Japan, when a group of older adults in their 70s volunteered to replace younger workers at the very badly damaged Fukushima nuclear plant. Remember how that had a leak after the tsunami? And they thought, better people like us, who've already raised families, better that we should go in there and risk the damaging effects of radiation instead of younger workers who were still taking care of children. They also felt that since it was the older generation that built the nuclear plant, they should be the ones to clean it up. Now that is a generosity that obliterates the stereotype of older adults as being self-centered. Number 7, appreciation. Older adults often know how to appreciate and savor things better than everybody else. Look at the way Simeon and Anna just overflow with praise when they're in the temple. You who are older can see the end of your days glimmering out there on the horizon, and it can make you appreciate things even more. Whether it's dessert or a kind word, a favorite song, a phone call. And you help those of us in your orbit appreciate them more too by pointing them out to us and sharing your delight in those things. So there we are, 7 potential strengths of older adults. And I use the word potential because just being older doesn't automatically mean you have these things, but you can. If I left something out, wonderful. Tell me what it is, and I'll add it to the list. The point being that mature trees produce more fruit than younger trees. And old age, despite its challenges and limitations, can also be a time when we get to enjoy and share the fruit of the Spirit that God has been producing in us. All that love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Pat is preaching next week, and the youth have a marvelous Sunday prepared for us after worship, so I hope you'll come then and enjoy lunch and a presentation on their mission trip. The following week, we will look at things almost any older adult can do, because one of the biggest fears is not being needed anymore, not being able to contribute. Guess what? You still can. We'll talk about how to be the kind of older adult that everybody else wants to be around. Meanwhile, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever stage you're in right now, know that God is with you, working in, with, and through you as much as you will allow it to make you a blessing.